is Australia turning into a surveillance state? Now, why do I ask this question? I suppose many people who are on the corona bandwagon, they quite welcome the new surveillance, and it's important to keep in mind that surveillance comes in many forms, okay? Cameras is one form of surveillance, but we see electronic and digital surveillance, QR codes, checking in, we see vaccine passports, we see the government trying to implement a program called digital identity, okay, where the Australian government wants to hold your identity in a central database because supposedly it's for your safety, it's going to make your life easier, and it's just going to really improve your quality of life. And by the way, you can absolutely trust the government, and you can be completely sure that the government would never misuse your data or lie to you, right? Because Daniel Andrews was not lying to the people of Victoria when he said the only thing that's going to help us is vaccination against this virus, right? Anyway, let's have a bit of a talk about this because I think that it's very concerning, the trend that our country is on. So I'm just going to open up the government website. All right, so we have digital identity here. They say verify it once, use it anytime, anywhere, all right? So it all sounds very well and good. There's a little video here. I'm not going to play it for you. It's basically a propaganda video trying to sell the benefits of the government centralizing your digital identity, all right? And what we also see here is that supposedly people can have their say. So look, if you really want to, you can go to this website. If you want me to email the address to you, it's mcjreport@protonmail.com. Actually, no, don't do that. Sign up for my newsletter, and that way I can send it out to everyone. So mcjreport.com/join the newsletter. You can submit your thoughts if you want. There's a submission form here. Honestly, I don't think the government listens to us. I don't think the government cares. In my humble, honest opinion, I think that we're wasting our time by even submitting our views and thoughts on this so-called digital identity. But again, if you want to do it, it's up to you. All right, so what we have here is a guide from the government, Guide to Your Digital Identity. So mostly it's a sales pitch selling Australians on how great this is, and the government is taking care of your life to make things more convenient. And by the way, we don't need the government to make things more convenient for us. We know for a fact the average type of character that works within the walls of our parliaments are first and foremost concerned about their career. They're concerned about re-election. Your rights come last. And I honestly believe that. So I made a couple of highlights from this document here. You can check it out for yourself, but there's a few things that sort of, stand out. Let me just see here. Let me just scroll down a bit. All right, so it says that there's restrictions on biometric information, all right? So when I see this, I think, all right, so basically what the government is claiming is that your bio data will be restricted from collection via this digital identity. But there's always an asterisk, okay? The government always leaves themselves a back door. Now, what we see in China today is mass biometric surveillance on a national scale. We see genomic surveillance in China, and we of course see digital surveillance as well, whereby people need QR codes to check in everywhere. They've got this social credit system where the government assigns a score to citizens. Do something the government likes, you get some privileges. Do something the government doesn't like, you get punished. Kind of sounds like whether or not you want to go and take an injection. But anyway, so it says here that there's restrictions on biometric information, and it says, well, we're not going to give it to the police, we're not going to give it to third parties, etc. We're going to do our best to keep your biometric data safe because that's sensitive. All right, but then it says down here, it says the bill allows for retention of biometric information in narrow circumstances. All right, so would anyone like to elaborate on what these narrow circumstances are? It says to enable limited operational testing and fraud detection activities. All right. It says here the bill and TDI rules place controls on such testing, including requirements for approval from an oversight authority. You mean like an independent oversight authority, or one that's handpicked by the government? One that is reminiscent of a Daniel Andrews IBAC hearing, or one from the private sector? I mean, come on, guys. Where has the oversight been since the inception of this corona situation in terms of health policy, restrictions, debating the science? There's been no oversight. Zero. So why the hell would anyone trust the government on this so-called digital identity program when they say that there's going to be an oversight authority for the collection of biometric data, okay? Data that is unique to your DNA, what makes you a human, what makes you you. I'm not on board with it. I think this has the potential to open up a huge can of worms. They say, no, we just want your digital identity and things like that to make your life easier. And while you're at it, your vaccination status, this can spiral out of control, in my opinion, to really see the initiation of some very disturbing surveillance in our country, just like in China, okay? Now, there is absolutely no reason to believe that what's happening in China cannot happen in Australia, okay? It's not as if the average Australian politician is more honourable than people from the Chinese Communist Party. It's not as if the average Australian politician cares more about human rights than the average CCP member, okay? Now, of course, there are some exceptions such as Craig Kelly, Malcolm Roberts. I understand that. Please understand I am speaking in general terms. All right, so what else do we have here? There was something else that I highlighted that I felt may have been necessary to address. Where is it here? Storage and handling of digital identity information. And this is in relation to where it can be accessed from. It says that the rules are strict for storing the information. Just like storing our military information, right? Which much of it has been stored in a Chinese database. I mean, we've already got the evidence. We understand the government is incompetent. I mean, did you know that right now we have ADF data stored in a Chinese organization's database? I mean, it really just makes you laugh. It says here that the TDI rules require that identity information must not be stored or accessed from outside Australia unless the oversight authority may grant conditional exceptions to these requirements on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, well, if the oversight authority is anything like the Foreign Investment Review Board, then they're going to have a field day. Who here is aware of FIRB, the Foreign Investment Review Board, that were supposedly reviewing applications for foreign investment and things like that? All the applications were essentially approved. You had this board made up of a few bureaucrats earning a ton of money, handpicked by the government. Okay, what do we have here today? China wants to buy a port. Okay, well, yeah, that seems reasonable. China wants to buy an airstrip. Mining rights. Yeah, okay, we think that's fair as well. So that was the oversight for foreign investment, and it was an absolute disastrous disgrace that put our national security at risk, that completely destroyed businesses and forced us to part with our economic sovereign assets and our strategic assets. So when the government says we're putting an oversight committee together, honestly, to me, that means absolutely nothing. All that means to me is the government is trying to convince you to trust them, and we have proof beyond reasonable doubt over many, many years that we have many reasons not to trust the government. This is just say no, all right? Just say no. So we saw here, right, the surveillance legislation amendment identify and disrupt bill that went through. A lot of us really concerned about our privacy online. Here's a bit of an overview from Melbourne Activist Legal. So that's melbactivistlegal.org.au. And it says here the bill creates 3 new warrants with the purpose of targeting serious and organised crime that utilise technologies. Okay, so people who are supposedly anonymous online. So it's all in the definitions, right? How do you define serious crime? Well, today it could mean one set of crimes. Tomorrow it could mean people organizing protests, people spreading information about certain injections that need to be investigated, that need to be identified and disrupted. Okay, so I mean, in this legislation, we have a series of warrants. We've got a data disruption warrant, okay, which essentially allows the police to investigate suspects and to add, copy, delete, alter files on a computer or a device, okay, so to enter and actually change data. We've got the network activity warrants, which allow agencies to collect intelligence on serious criminal activity, all right? Serious like standing against the government sort of serious, like protesting during a deadly pandemic serious. It says here, by intercepting communications and using surveillance devices on computer networks. Okay, so the AFP are permitted to do, quote, anything reasonably necessary. Reasonably necessary. Well, I tell you what I consider to be reasonably necessary is very different to what the government considers to be reasonably necessary. All right, it says here, it can access and modify computers, allowing the warrant to be conducted covertly. It's available when there's reasonable suspicion, all right? Reasonable suspicion. What does that even mean? What does it mean to be reasonably suspicious? It's just an absolute joke. Let's see. So it also, we have account takeover warrants, which is concerning, which gives authorities the power to take over people's online accounts for the purpose of gathering evidence. Okay, it says again reasonable suspicion, and we see that so basically online messages can be intercepted, altered, information can be extracted based on these warrants. We have no idea the extent to which this type of extraordinary power will be misused, and you tie everything in together, and it makes you feel very concerned about where we might be heading as a country. That's right. So obviously, a lot of people have been groomed to accepting the surveillance policies of the Chief Health Officer directions, the implementation of vaccine passports. We know for sure the construction of surveillance cameras has been quite in effect as well over the past 2 years. I mean, you look at the Belt and Road Initiative in China and some of the countries that were entered by China, they have become surveillance states as well. So China is most definitely interested in replicating their model around the world, but they've got their work sorted out in Australia because Daniel Andrews is really taking over that for them here in Victoria. So of course the digital identity wallet, why would it ever be a good idea to consolidate more of our private information into the hands of a government that we know sets up phony oversight boards, right? And of course this new legislation, identify and disrupt, to access people's social media. To me, this is really just going down the lines of a social credit system, okay? So in China, they make no bones about it. They call it a social credit system. In Australia, they're actually not as honest. I mean, I never thought I'd say this, but the Chinese Communist Party, in terms of their efforts to surveil their population, to conduct surveillance, and to modify human behavior, they're actually honest about what they want to do. Okay, the Chinese government says, look, there's certain behavior that is good, there's certain behavior that is bad. People that do the good behavior get rewarded, people that do bad behavior are punished. Right? They're honest about it. But here in Australia, it's all done under the guise of your safety. This is all for your safety, this is for your health, this is for your freedom, and it's to make your life super easy and convenient. Don't worry about anything. We, the government, have your back, and I call absolute bullshit. The government in Australia is far too big. It's filled with talentless losers. The bureaucracies are inundated with people that sit around earning huge incomes, doing absolutely nothing. What we need to advocate for in this country is a massive descaling of the size of our government, an overhaul of the bureaucracies. I'd say probably more than half of the bureaucracies could be scrapped tomorrow, and probably our country would be better off for it. Okay? And it's really concerning to think where this is all heading. I have a clip here. It goes for about 7 minutes. detailing the social credit system in China, and this is what I see unfolding right in front of our eyes here in Australia.
So, picture your life in a place where everything you do, what you buy, how you behave, is tracked. The government gives you a score, and the score is a measure of how trustworthy you are as a citizen and determines what you're allowed to do, like ever. Boarding a train, getting a mortgage, all goes back to this score. It's called social credit. It sounds like that show Black Mirror, but it's actually happening in China. So how does that change you? Does it change you? What does your life look like when your every move is watched? The system's eyes are in big data, artificial intelligence, and roughly 200 million surveillance cameras. And that's totally fine with Ouyang Haoyu. She's 21, graduated from a good school with solid grades. She's diligent. She's nice. No surprise, she's a 752. That's her rating with Sesame Credit, a private company working with the government on the algorithms for the social credit system. The scores go from 350 to 950 and are based on habits and behavior. Buy clothes or diapers, it's good. A lot of alcohol, too many video games, not so good. Haoyu's 752 puts her in model citizen range and gets her discounts and privileges, like using a shared bike without a deposit. She likes it. Her friends do too. They all have pretty high scores.
It's a mechanism like pushes you to become a better citizen, to build on the trust, especially on the Chinese market.
Because you're not going to be punished if you haven't done anything wrong.
I think that's the point. I think the system is working as a warning or an alert to push people to do it, to be a good person.
And it's mandatory. When it goes national, social credit scores will be assigned to every one of China's citizens for life. And what's weird is that so many people seem okay with it. It's complicated, but China went from extreme poverty to economic giant pretty quickly. A credit history system didn't grow at the same pace, so people would default on loans and get away with it. Add in scandals around fake food, tainted baby milk, counterfeit goods, and what you've got is a big problem with trust. So, in 2014, the Communist Party called for a system to allow the trustworthy to roam everywhere under heaven while making it hard for the discredited to take a single step. The model is a place called Rongcheng. It's in Shandong province. It's orderly. Streets are spotless. Cars slow down, which is unheard of in China. Words like honesty and credibility appear on propaganda posters. Display cases show pictures of Rongcheng's most honored citizens. You start with 1,000 points, and you can print out your report anytime. You lose points for things like jaywalking, littering, tossing cigarette butts, or spreading rumors. Cameras do a lot of the surveillance work, but it's pretty analog too, like posters that list the ways you can gain or lose points. And each night, local TV shows the surveillance highlights of the day. And then there's Zhou Aini. She's an information collector, a paid enforcer who walks around and writes down deeds about her neighbors. Like the man who carried a drunk person home. Things like this are good deeds, she said. But the farmer overheard swearing and being rude? Yeah, bad deeds. Her quota is 10 a month. She likes the work, thinks the city's better for it. The thing about the social credit system is that there isn't one single system. Not yet. Different places have different rules. So what do you do if you have bad social credit? Well, for one, you talk about it on Weibo, which is like Twitter. There are forums for discredited people to vent and get advice. In Chongqing, we hooked up with Huang Huijun. He had a business until he was sued by a client, and Huang refused to pay 90 grand to settle it. So the court put him on a social credit blacklist, and things got way worse. He explains that being blacklisted means he can't buy airplane or train tickets. When he tries, a message pops up saying he's discredited. By the end of last year, blacklisted people were blocked from booking 23 million flights and 5 million high-speed train trips. And the list goes on. Being discredited makes it hard to get a job, a loan, a hotel room, or put kids in certain schools. Then there's the public shaming. Photo galleries of blacklisted citizens. There's even an app that shows who around you is in debt. In China, being monitored is nothing new. But algorithmic surveillance makes it possible to collect data to build detailed profiles of people, especially the ones not loyal to the government. Of all the video surveillance cameras on the planet right now, nearly half of them are in China. Are people bothered by privacy concerns?
So we think the lot of camera keep the safety is really good things. A lot of people, we can accept it.
And cameras are getting smarter.
So the information that comes up from my image identifies that I'm female, middle-aged, talks about whether I'm wearing glasses, the shape of my face.
AI is taking them next level. They can do more than just see. They actually understand who they're seeing. So at what point can the technology know too much? Does it already?
Most time, people don't care about it. But if the technology learns too much, for example, cross the red line, it's not very good.
How far off are we from needing to draw those red lines?
It's very hard to say. I think maybe decades, I mean 10 years or 20 years, 15 years, maybe.
That's not very long.
Yeah.
It's coming.
It's coming.
And where does it all go? Hao Yu isn't so bothered. Her Sesame score is high. Life is good, and she's used to living most of it online. Soon, her education and medical records and any run-ins with the law will factor into her social credit score. And wherever she goes, someone will follow and ask, who can you trust?
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so there you have it, a brief overview of the social credit system in China. My concern is that we are absolutely heading this way in Australia. We see, of course, rewards for people who comply with the government and punishment for people who don't. Digital identity, the government able to intercept our online interactions. Cameras, I mean, we really need to take a massive stand against this. For 1 minute, nobody should be under the illusion that once the government assumes these powers, that they will give them up easily. Okay, if it's one thing we know, that is absolutely not the case, and unchecked power in the hands of the government absolutely leads to more overreach, more incursions on our privacy, and Australians better wake up and get smart really quickly. A lot of these Chinese surveillance firms and technology companies, they have offices here in Australia. They're also genomic sequencing companies, genomic surveillance companies, or companies that have ties to such operations. They have their tentacles in Australia. There's tremendous financial interests for many of these organizations here. And what can I say? Just say no. Talk to your friends and family, because otherwise it's simply going to be too late, and the freedom of future Australians will be all but destroyed. In fact, they'll never know what freedom is.